The Pacific Crest Trail has a way of quieting you. Not the kind of quiet that soothes. The kind that presses a hand over your mouth and asks you, in a voice older than your bones, if you really belong here. Eli Novak had heard hikers talk about this kind of silence. A punishing silence, some called it. A testing silence, others said. But he had never felt it. Not really. Until he reached the long, lonely stretch between mile 400 and mile 410. There the wind didn't just pass through trees. It lingered in them, as though listening. He didn't think much about the sensation at first. Most hikers on the PCT reach a point where exhaustion blurs into paranoia, and paranoia blurs into awe, and awe blurs into a kind of low-level fear you carry in your pack right next to your trail mix and water filter. But this stretch felt different, felt sentient, alive, waiting, even before Mara disappeared. Hey guys! Welcome to another episode of stories that will make you question whether you're truly alone right now. You're listening to Silent Scream Chronicles. Do well to subscribe, share, and hit the like button for more tales to come. And also let me know where you're listening from in the comments. Eli had been on trail for 3 weeks when he met Mara. He first saw her crouched beside a trickling water source near mile 321. A narrow catchment between two boulders where cold runoff collected in a shallow, crystal-clear pool. She was humming. A soft tune, circular, repetitive, like a lullaby with the beginning cut off. He didn't recognize it then, but he would later. He approached with a hey, and she looked up with dark eyes that immediately assessed him. Not in a hostile way, but the way solo hikers do when they're weighing whether the stranger approaching is safe. "Water's cold," she said simply. "Good, stop." That was all. No elaborate introduction. No shy small talk. But she offered him space beside her. And that gesture alone told him everything he needed to know. She wasn't afraid to share the trail, at least for a little while. Over the next few miles, they discovered they liked similar things. Long stretches without talking. Slow, steady pacing. Early mornings and late sunsets. Silence that wasn't awkward. The companionship of someone who understood the quiet language of the trail. She had a quiet confidence. A soft laugh that appeared rarely but warmly. A way of scanning the woods that made Eli feel safer without fully knowing why. They camped together once, by accident, and then again intentionally the next night. By the fourth night they moved like a team. Collecting water. Sharing tortillas. Comparing blisters. Checking each other for ticks. Exchanging looks when the forest made noises that didn't sound like wind. Then came the strange section. The part hikers online sometimes whispered about but never dared linger on. "Something feels off here," Mara murmured on the evening of the 5th day. She said it quietly, as if she didn't want the forest to hear her. Eli agreed. He didn't know why. He just did. The trail ahead felt thicker, heavier, dense with an atmosphere that made conversation die before it could leave your throat. "Let's camp before the ridge," Mara suggested. There was an edge to her voice now. Not fear, anticipation, as if she expected something. They set camp near a dried creek bed, where the earth was cracked like reptile scales and the trees leaned together like conspirators. Night fell with unusual speed. One moment the sky was pale gold. The next it was bruised purple, then black. No stars, no breeze. Just darkness thick enough to feel on your skin. Eli's tent fabric fluttered lightly, though there was no wind. He listened. Nap. A twig broke near his tent. He sat up too fast, his sleeping bag twisting around his legs. He held his breath. Another snap. Then a soft drag, like someone's foot trailing lazily through dirt. "Eli," Mara whispered through the nylon wall separating them. "You heard it too." She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Something was circling their camp. Slowly, deliberately. But the footsteps weren't heavy enough to be a deer. Not quick enough to be a coyote. Not scattered enough to be a raccoon. These were human steps. Measured steps. As if whoever was out there was pacing, waiting, listening. After a long moment the steps faded. But the tension did not. Eli didn't sleep. He doubted Mara did either. And somewhere in that sleepless darkness, as he stared at the faint outline of pine branches through his tent, he realized something subtle. He no longer felt alone on the trail. Not in the comforting sense. Not in the human sense. He felt observed. As if the forest had opened one immense, unblinking eye. And it was staring directly at them. Eli only drifted into sleep when the first gray hint of dawn touched the sky. When he awoke, sunlight was already glowing faintly through his tent fabric. He felt disoriented. Heavy. Something tugged at the edges of his awareness. A sense of imbalance. Before he even opened the zipper. Then he noticed the silence. Not the peaceful morning kind. The kind that feels like someone pressed a pillow over the world's face. He unzipped his tent slowly. The clearing was still. Unnaturally still. "Mara," he called, even though he knew immediately the answer would be wrong. Her tent was open. Her sleeping bag was unzipped, still puffed with warmth. Her shoes were beside the tent entrance. Her jacket lay neatly folded. Her backpack leaned against a log. All her gear was there, except her. Eli stepped closer, dread crawling up his spine. "Mara!" Louder now. Only silence answered. He checked around the tent for footprints. He found none. Checked the creek bed. Nothing. The ridge trail. Nothing. He called again, voice cracking. "Mara! Mara!" But the forest swallowed her name whole, as if absorbing it. That's when he saw the poles. 2 trekking poles stood upright in the dirt. Perfectly parallel. Perfectly balanced. Driven into the earth at symmetrical angles. Not dropped. Not thrown. Not casually placed. Ranged. Deliberately. By hands that didn't understand what they were. Only that they belonged to her. Eli stood frozen. His pulse slamming against his ribs. She was gone. Truly gone. Not wandered off. Not misstep. Not injured. Without a trace. The silence around him deepened, pressing in on all sides. The forest seemed to lean closer, waiting for his reaction. He whispered, barely breathing. "What took you?" The forest didn't answer. But somehow, he felt it smiling. Most hikers would have run back toward civilization. Reported everything. Begged for help. Eli didn't. He packed Mara's gear beside his own. His hands trembling as he folded her jacket and clipped her pack straps. He couldn't explain what he felt. Not fully. But he felt something. Pull. Direction. A sense of where she had gone. Or where she had been taken. Not southwest toward the ranger station. Not back toward mile 400. But forward. Deeper. Toward mile 427. He didn't understand how he knew it. He didn't question why. He just knew. Whatever took her. Didn't want him to go back. It wanted him to go forward. And some part of him. The part that had been waking earlier and earlier each morning. The part that felt watched last night. The part that felt the trail shift under his feet. That part was terrified. Another part was curious. And a small, dark part whispered, she might still be alive. The forest might let you see her again. But only if you go deeper. So he did. Eli hoisted both packs onto his shoulders, tightened the straps, and walked toward the ridge trail. Every step felt heavier. But he kept moving. Because he couldn't stop now. Mara's humming drifted into his memory. The tune echoed faintly. Absurdly. As if the forest itself were playing it back for him. He froze. It wasn't memory. It was real. Something in the trees was humming her tune, lowly, wrongly, as if learning the notes for the first time. Eli backed away, breath shaking. The humming stopped instantly. In the far distance, barely audible, a crack of a tree branch. Intentional. The forest was aware of him, watching him, guiding him, or luring him. Either way, Eli felt the truth settle like ice in his chest. Mile 427 wasn't a location. It was a threshold. And something on the trail wanted him to cross it. So he kept walking, toward the place where the forest had swallowed his friend whole. Eli walked with both packs digging into his shoulders, the straps biting deeper each mile. Normally, the Pacific Crest Trail offered generous switchbacks and stretches of forgiving dirt, but as he moved toward mile 427, the trail began to change beneath him. Not visually, not in a way you could photograph, changed in feeling. The forest thickened, the light dimmed, the temperature dipped just enough to raise goosebumps on his arms. At first, Eli thought the canopy was simply denser here. But then he realized something unsettling. The tree lean wasn't blocking the sun. It was absorbing it. Colors dulled. Shadows stretched abnormally long, like dark fingers reaching across the path. Every sound seemed distant, flattened, muted, smothered under something heavy. Eli tried to hum to break the tension, but the forest swallowed the sound in less than a second. It was like dropping pebbles into an abyss. 2 hours into the day's climb, he saw something on the trail ahead, a strip of bright red. He moved faster, heart slamming, until he realized what it was. A piece of fabric from Mara's bandana. He picked it up with trembling fingers. It wasn't torn. It wasn't snagged on a branch. It wasn't weathered. It was placed, folded neatly in half, then in half again, and set at a perfect right angle against a stone. Like a breadcrumb, like a message, but not from Mara. She wasn't a person who moved in straight lines or neat angles. She was messy, loose, free. This wasn't her language. This was imitation. He pocketed the fabric. His breath fogged slightly. Too cold for noon. Another sign appeared 20 minutes later. Her water bottle, full, lid sealed, balanced on top of a fallen log like an offering. Eli swallowed hard. Something was leaving him a path. Not to help, but to watch him follow it. As he approached the higher elevation, the wind returned. But it carried something with it. Voice. No, not a voice. Tone. Faint, broken humming. Mara's humming, but far too slow. Too breathy. As if pushed through lungs that didn't belong to her. The tune dropped in pitch midway, then rose again artificially, like a creature learning human sounds by repeating them back poorly. Eli froze on the trail, his pack straps creaking as he stopped. The humming drifted from the right, then the left, then ahead, then behind him simultaneously, as if the forest wasn't echoing it, but producing it. He spun slowly, scanning dense pines. Nothing moved, but the tune continued, circling him like a predator sniffing its prey. His breath quickened. "Stop it," he whispered. The humming ceased instantly. Instantly. Too instantly. As though the forest had been waiting for permission. Eli turned and hurried forward, no longer walking for Mara, walking for survival. The ridge opened up as the trail climbed higher, but the light didn't brighten. Instead, the world grew darker. Clouds formed without drifting in. They simply appeared, as though materializing from the air around him. No wind, no shift, just sudden, heavy grayness. The smell of ozone prickled his nose. A storm. Here. But no, the air wasn't moving. Not a hair on his head stirred. The world had gone still in a way storms never were. Eli looked up. The sky above him wasn't cloudy. It was blank, colorless, textureless, as if someone had wiped the sky clean. He blinked hard. His eyes adjusted. The cloud cover wasn't clouds at all. It was a single vast sheet of lightless gray, like a lid tightening over the world. He should have turned back. He didn't. At mile 425, he reached the clearing. It wasn't on any map. In fact, the trail here was supposed to run for another mile before any open view. But the clearing stretched wide and circular, as though carved out deliberately. And in the center stood a structure he had only heard rumors about in campfire whispers. An abandoned fire lookout tower. Weather-beaten timber rising into the dead sky like a skeletal finger. At first glance, it looked man-made. At second glance, not entirely. The angles were wrong. too sharp in some places, too slanted in others. The railings twisted subtly, as though they had grown that way instead of being built. The windows were blackened, opaque from the outside. No reflections. Eli stopped breathing for a moment. He felt himself pulled toward it, as if the tower were exhaling softly, drawing him nearer with each breath. Somewhere inside he sensed a presence. Watcher. Waiting. The air around him thickened like honey as he approached the steps. His foot touched the first one. The wood vibrated faintly beneath him. Not from instability, more like a heartbeat. The door to the lookout was cracked open. Darkness pooled in the entryway like liquid ink. Eli hesitated. Every instinct screamed turn around, but the silence inside the tower felt almost magnetic. The quietest place he had ever experienced. As if sound dared not enter. He pushed the door slowly. It opened without sound. Inside the air was cold. Much colder than the trail. Unnaturally so. His breath puffed visibly in front of him. The room was small and circular, with dust-coated windows lining every wall. A metal desk sat in the center, warped with rust. But what caught his attention were the walls. They were covered in carvings. Hundreds, no thousands, of carved lines, shapes, symbols, scratches. Many were meaningless. Some formed spirals. Some formed jagged vertical lines. Some looked like tally marks. But a few were unmistakably human figures. Dick shapes, always alone, always elongated, always drawn with their heads tilted excessively to one side. Some had their mouths drawn open in silent screams. Some had no mouths at all. Others had long, stretched arms pointing toward a single direction. A narrow passage behind the desk. The doorless doorway that led deeper inside. Eli's stomach dropped. The carvings weren't merely marks. They were warnings, or instructions, or stories left by whoever or whatever had been here before. "Mara," he whispered, voice cracking. He knew she wasn't here, but he also felt she wasn't entirely gone. Something of her lingered, like breath caught in the air. As he stepped deeper inside, a soft vibration brushed his wrist. He glanced down. His GPS beacon, clipped to his pack strap, was blinking, then buzzing, then vibrating continuously. But the screen displayed only static, pixelated snow. No words, no coordinates, no emergency code. Just the raw hiss of a signal too strong or too corrupted to decipher. Eli tapped it. The static grew louder. He lowered the volume. Didn't change. The device buzzed harder, like it was receiving a transmission far beyond its capability. Through the static, voice. First only a whisper, then a shape, then a faint, unmistakable pattern. A sequence of tones forming a humming melody. Mara's melody, except bent, warped, distorted through layers of interference that made it sound like it was being forced through a throat that didn't know how to sing. Eli's blood froze. "Mara," he whispered again, barely audible. The signal crackled. Then, through the static, the humming turned into something else. Words, breathless. "But, Eli, help!" He stumbled back against the desk, legs shaking violently. It wasn't Mara. He knew her voice intimately after weeks on the trail. This voice was only using her tone, like a puppet trying to mimic its puppeteer. The voice coughed through the static, a wet, unnatural sound. "Come. Stairs." Eli's stomach twisted. There were no stairs in the lookout. Not on any he had seen. Unless, he turned slowly. Unless the narrow dark slit behind the desk wasn't just a doorway. Unless it led downward. Below the tower. Into the earth. He felt eyes on him. Not from the room. From underneath it. Something below the tower was waiting. Pulling. Pretending. And it used Mara's voice because it wanted him to believe she was alive. Or because it wanted him to follow her fate. His GPS vibrated one last time so violently it slipped from his hand and clattered across the floor. It vibrated until the casing cracked. Then it went silent, completely dead, not drained, killed, like something had reached through the signal and snapped its life. Silence returned. He stood in the center of the room, breathing hard. Then thud. Eli's head jerked upward. A step. Heavy. Low. Deliberate. Not coming from below. Coming from the roof of the tower. Each footstep was deep and measured, like something large and bipedal pacing directly above him. The boards groaned under its weight. Then the pacing stopped directly above the center of the room. Directly above Eli. He didn't move. He didn't breathe. A long, slow dragging sound scraped across the roof, as though whatever was up there was lowering something, leaning over, trying to peer through the ceiling. Eli closed his eyes tightly. The roof creaked under shifting weight. A sharp, low, stretched whisper. Eli. Not Mara's voice. Something older. Something hungrier. Something that had learned his name. The tower groaned violently, the windows rattling as if the structure itself inhaled. Eli ran. Not toward the exit. Toward the back. Toward the narrow opening. Toward the place the carvings all pointed. Toward the dark. He didn't know why. He didn't have a choice. The footsteps above moved rapidly, crossing the roof in 3 fast strides that shook dust loose from the rafters. Eli reached the slit in the wall. Cold air poured out, or so cold it burned. He ducked inside. The space tightened immediately, brushing his shoulders. He realized instantly. This wasn't part of the original tower design. This was carved, hollowed, tunnel, leading down. The humming returned behind him. Closer now, almost eager. Then he heard the door of the tower slam open behind him, and something massive stepped inside. The tunnel swallowed Eli in seconds. The wood of the lookout tower faded into hard-packed soil that brushed both his shoulders. The air turned colder. So cold his breath crystallized in front of him in short, panicked puffs. He crawled downward, the space tightening every few feet. Roots jutted from the earth, brushing his face, tugging at his shirt, clawing at his pack as though the forest itself was trying to keep him here, either to slow him down or claim him entirely. Behind him, the sound of heavy footsteps shook the tower floorboards. Something was entering the gap after him. He heard it breathe, a long, deep inhale, like something smelling him. He scrambled faster. The tunnel sloped steeply. He slid more than crawled, palms scraping raw against stone and root. The humming followed him into the earth. Low, slow, trembling falsely with a forced rhythm. The mimicry was getting closer. And better. Stop, Eli whispered shakily. The humming instantly changed pitch, as though adjusting, not stopping, perfecting. After what felt like minutes of downward crawling, the tunnel opened into a chamber barely large enough for Eli to kneel in. A faint bioluminescent glow came from somewhere, a sickly greenish light pulsing like a heartbeat. He blinked. Shapes emerged. Carvings. Hundreds of them. Every inch of the dirt walls was etched with depictions of the same tall, distorted figure. Limbs too long. Neck bent at unnatural angles. Jaw hanging open. But something else was drawn alongside the figure. Hikers. Always in pairs. One walking ahead. One falling behind. Always the same 2 rolls. Always the same result. One disappears. The other is lured deeper. Then both are claimed. Eli's breath hitched. A fresh carving stopped him cold. It wasn't weathered like the others. It didn't have the same ancient look. The dirt around it was loose, freshly scraped. 2 stick figures. One labeled M. One labeled E. M vanished into a spiral. He followed the spiral. The spiral ended in a tall figure with a bent neck. Eli's heart hammered. Someone or something had known he would come. A sound whispered behind him. Not breathing. Not footsteps. A scraping glide like bare skin sliding across roots and earth. Eli turned slowly. A silhouette filled the tunnel entrance. Long limbs. Crooked posture. Head tilted too far to one side as if straining to listen. It was tall. Far too tall to fit in the tunnel. Yet it compressed its frame. Like a spider bending itself into a crack in the wall. Its joints popped as it shifted. The humming resumed. This time perfectly in tune. Each note just as Mara had sung it at the water source days ago. The same rhythm. The same pauses. The same soft breath between beats. But the mouth making the sound didn't belong to her. It opened wider than a human's ever could. Wider than flesh should stretch. The jaw hung like it was unhinged entirely. Mare! It crooned through the tune. But the voice was wrong. Not feminine. Not masculine. Hello, me. Echoing like it was resonating through a pile of dead leaves. Eli sobbed once, involuntarily. He backed against the dirt wall. The creature leaned closer. And it lifted its hand. Hanging from one of its elongated fingers was Mara's necklace. Her silver compass pendant. The one she always wore tucked under her shirt. The creature held it out to him. As if offering him hope, lure, promise, or a warning. Then it spoke again. This time in her exact voice. Eli, it's me, help. Tears pricked Eli's eyes. No, he whispered. No, you're not her. The creature froze. Its head cocked further sideways. So far the neck gave a sickening crack. The bioluminescent glow exposed its eyes. Not one pair, but several. All blinking independently. All focused on him. The mimicry dissolved. Its real voice seeped through the chamber. Come. Command. Demand. A hunger. Eli bolted. He dove back into the narrow tunnel. Elbows slamming roots. Knees smashing stone. Fingers bleeding. The creature followed. Its long arms scraping the walls. Pulling its body forward with terrifying ease. Its limbs bent wrong. Double-jointed. Triple-jointed. Folding and unfolding like something boneless. The humming turned into a shriek. A layered sound. Hundreds of voices screaming at once. Well, female. Children. Well, human. Not human. Every voice Mara had ever spoken to him. Layered together. And amplified. Eli. He screamed and clawed upward through the tunnel. The tower above groaned. Us fell. He felt the creature's hand brush his boot. He kicked with everything he had. A hiss. An insect-like rattle. And lunged again. Eli burst out of the tunnel. Into the tower floor. He didn't stop. He sprinted toward the exit. Outside, the sky was fully dead gray now. No depth. No brightness. No direction. The forest had gone silent again. Not from peace, but anticipation. The trees leaned unnaturally inward, as though they were bending to watch him. Pines twisted subtly, branches angling toward the lookout like pointing fingers. Eli sprinted down the slope. Behind him, the lookout tower shrieked, a sound like tortured wood, and something ancient, pulling itself free of the earth. He dared a glance back. The creature was climbing out of the tunnel, its limbs unfolding, in ways that made his stomach churn. It stepped onto the tower platform. The wood sagged under its weight. Its head rotated too far. Then it dropped onto all fours and rushed down the steps with a speed that defied its size. Eli ran harder. The trail narrowed along a ridge. One side was forest, the other, a sheer drop of at least 200 feet. Wind whipped violently now. The first real wind in hours. Cold, furious, alive. Eli's pack straps slapped against his shoulders. His breath tore from his lungs. Behind him, the creature's shrieks echoed. It wasn't humming now. It was angry. Angry he was resisting. Angry he wasn't just following. Angry he wasn't prey that behaved like prey. The trees along the ridge leaned hard, as if the forest itself wanted to push him off. Branches snapped. Roots jutted out of the ground like tripping hazards. Shadows lengthened unnaturally. The forest was shifting to herd him, to corner him, to corral him back toward the thing. Mara, Eli whispered. I'm sorry. The wind answered with a sound like a woman sobbing, or laughing, or both. As he neared the highest point of the ridge, Eli froze. 'Cause she stood there. Or something wearing her face. She stood at the center of the narrow trail, her hair hanging over her eyes, her posture limp, her clothes dirty and torn. Her body swayed slightly in the wind. But the wind wasn't strong enough to move her like that. "Eli," she whispered. Her voice was wrong, like someone playing her through a damaged speaker, like breath being forced through cold lungs. "Don't leave. Come back." He shook his head violently, tears streaming. "That's not you." Her head lifted. Slowly. Too slowly. Her neck creaked like a dead branch lifting against gravity. Her eyes were all wrong. Dark, empty, wide. Like something peering out from behind them. Like Mara wasn't behind the eyes anymore. Something else was. She stretched out her hand. Behind her, Eli saw movement. The creature approaching. Closing the distance. He took one step back. Mara's voice broke into a layered scream. "Don't run." Dozens of voices bursting through her throat. All wrong. All fused. He stumbled backward. And one misstep sent gravel sliding under his boots. His heel hit empty air. The world tilted. He fell. The drop felt endless. Wind roared in his ears. Branches tore at him as he plummeted. His pack yanked on his shoulders. Crash. Agony exploded through him as he hit a slanted section of the cliff. He rolled violently down rock and debris, smashing into roots and branches until, he landed hard on his side in a shallow ravine. Everything went black for a moment. When he opened his eyes, his breath came in wheezing gasps. He tried to move. Pain radiated from everywhere. But his legs worked. His arms worked. Somehow he wasn't dead. Above him the ridge loomed. He saw Mara's silhouette peering over. Then it tilted sideways at an impossible angle and vanished. The creature didn't look down after her. It didn't need to. It knew he wasn't dead. And it knew there would be another chance. Eli crawled through the ravine until he reached a drainage cut. Then a dry stream bed. The world brightened slightly as he descended further. The strange gray sky giving way to natural daylight again. Birds returned. Wind felt real again. The forest no longer pressed in on him. He stumbled for hours, limping, crying, gasping, until he hit a dirt road. A passing truck stopped when they saw him collapse onto the gravel. The driver sprinted out. "Jesus Christ, kid. What the hell happened to you?" Eli wanted to answer. He really did. Instead he whispered, "Mara, she's still up there." The driver called for help. Rangers arrived. Search teams. Bugs. Helicopters. They found nothing. No tower. No chamber. No carvings. No footprints. Not even the clearing. Mile 427, according to official maps, didn't exist. But Eli knew where it was. And so did the thing that lived there. Days later, after Eli was discharged from the hospital, he powered on his GPS tracker. The one that cracked in the tower. The one that had gone dead. Turned on instantly. No damage. No glitches. One notification blinked at him. His shaking hands opened it. A recording played. Static. Wind. Soft crackles. Voice. Her voice. Perfect this time. Mara message, mile 420. Static cut her off. Then a final whisper, broken and terrified. "Don't follow it." Eli dropped the tracker. Because he knew the truth. That wasn't a message she sent. It was a message the forest recorded. A mimicry. Lure. Leftover voice. A warning too late. A year has passed, and Eli refuses to hike anymore. He moved states. Started over. Changed his number. Cut ties with everyone connected to the trail. But the forest isn't done with him. Because some nights, when the wind passes through the trees outside his apartment, he hears a faint familiar tune. Humming. Mara's voice carried on something that learned how to sound human. But never how to be human. And sometimes, when he's too tired to fight sleep. He swears he hears a whisper right beside his bed. Eli, time to come back. He hasn't returned to the trail. But the Pacific Crest Trail doesn't always wait for you to return. Sometimes, comes looking. If you enjoyed this story and want more dark, slow-burning horror from the Pacific Crest Trail, make sure you subscribe to Silent Scream Chronicles. Like this video if you want part 2 of this universe. Comment PCT, so the algorithm knows you survived this long. And remember, some trails aren't meant to be explored. Some paths are meant to be ignored. And some voices should never be followed.